Hey, welcome to the podcast. Before we get into it today, I just want to talk about our sponsors. This is brought to you by Local Menace Apparel. Now, we first came across these guys at Four Chord Music Festival last year, and honestly, they're right up our street, completely involved in the same scene as us. Local Menace is an independent punk and alternative clothing brand, doing things their own way, no corporate nonsense, just quality gear made for people who actually care about our scene. Whether you're heading to a show or you're just repping the culture day to day, they've got you covered. Head over to localmenace.com. That's localmenace.com. Head to their store and you can use our discount code, which will get you 25% off. The code is WASTETIME. That's WASTETIME. That's localmenace.com. Link will also be in our show notes. All right, let's get into it. Hello, Chris here. Just a quick, I'm intersecting before we get to the real intro. Want to give you all a big apology. So Nick and I just recorded this intro. Nick wasn't able to be near his microphone, so he was on a headset, which doesn't sound great. I was giving him some shit for that. And then I played it back and I had it set on my AirPods, not my mic, so I sound even worse than him. It's still listenable, but I just want to apologize for the poor quality you're about to hear for a few minutes, for about 10 minutes, and then you'll get to the actual interview. Okay, here it is. Welcome to the Wasting Time podcast, part of the Never a Phase network. I am Chris. I'm here with Nick. Hello, Nick.
This episode is Kevin Lyman of Warped Tour fame.
Yeah.
Founder, curator of Warped Tour. What a legend he is. It was a pleasure to speak to him.
Yeah, it was a privilege. Obviously, Warped Tour is a huge thing for both of us. Like, you could kind of almost say that the music that we cover on this podcast is Warped Tour music. So to speak to the founder was it was an absolute privilege.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say kind of Warped left definitely its mark on us, and it was a gateway for us as well to a lot of music and bands back in the day. It wasn't just a festival, was it? It was a brand. It was a genre kind of leading platform, really, wasn't it?
And it's obviously it came back last year, and it's good to see it just thriving once again. So it's kicking off on June 13th and 14th in Washington DC again, and then a couple of dates in the summer. We've got Mexico and Canada this time, and then finishing up again in November. So yeah, it's going to be a busy year in Warped Tour world.
And obviously it's something we followed. I remember being in your bedroom watching Warped Tour DVDs, probably before the days of YouTube, maybe. I'm not sure
comfortably before the YouTube days. Yeah.
So watching Warped Tour stuff back then, and to kind of what it is now, and obviously they took a long break, but I think it's safe to say that Warped Tour paved the way for Slam Dunk over here.
Absolutely.
And and Kevin talked about it in this episode, right? Obviously we were at Slam Dunk this weekend, but Kevin talked about Slam Dunk doing Warped in the UK, but actually Slam Dunk are doing such a good job of flying the flag for the scene. He wasn't sure whether there was that gap for Warped over there. So
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into that conversation in this episode. But on the subject of Slam Dunk, should we have a little chat about kind of what's on the list for the weekend? Fast approaching.
Yeah, I think so. I think let's not give too much away about interviews we've got booked and stuff. So it'd be, obviously nice for that to be revealed in the next episode.
As an attendee, like, what does your day look like as a festival goer at Slam Dunk this year? Interviews aside.
So the things that really jump out to me, I'd like to see Youth Fountain, but I don't know if I will, just because it's so early in the day. It's 11:30.
Yeah, it's whether we get through the doors in time for that, isn't it? Is he doing an acoustic thing, or is he like?
I don't know. I assume it's full band, but I don't know. And also Beauty School on the main stage around that same time as well.
Yeah, I suppose you've got Bayside and Broadside, which are kind of quite early in the day. I think try and get along to one of those, and then you've got Driveways as well, which is at 2:00.
Driveway's 2 o'clock. Yep, that's a big one. I'm kind of planning to watch that on both days. That's one of those ones for me, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, good friends of the podcast. Obviously,
Absolutely.
Our manager is also a good friend of ours as well.
Yep, we may have talked about him and to him a few times over the years.
So if you are going to Slam Dunk this weekend, I would say definitely get Driveways on your list. It's their first ever Slam Dunk. They've been very well received in the UK already with some small tours. So yeah, put them on your list if they're not already.
Yep.
I mean, I always like Zebrahead. Watching Zebrahead live, they always bring a good show. Yeah,
you really enjoyed them last year, didn't you?
They're just a fun band to watch live, and they're a lot.
Yeah, I always enjoy them. I didn't catch them last year because I think I had interviews that clashed with them. But yeah, they're good. I don't think I've ever seen them since Adrian took over as the singer. So
right, okay,
yeah,
okay, cool. And then we got Cartel. Who's going to try and I'm sure we both are keen to get along for some of their set.
Yes.
We also got Goldfinger. I think,
Goldfinger's a big one.
Yeah, if there's time for Goldfinger, they never disappoint. I'd quite like to see Origami Angel, and I know my brother will probably want to see them.
Yeah, they're definitely the kind of band your brother. I could see. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me your brother likes them. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe if the stars align for that, what else have we got in the mix? I guess it's probably a little bit of a break ahead of Dashboard, really.
Yeah, I mean the things I kind of want to see. Like I'd watch Stand Atlantic, but I don't know if I'd go out my way for it. So just that depends,
Yeah, I'd love to catch the whole of the Dashboard set. Just because, go back a long way with Dashboard. And,
I mean, I'm keen for that as well.
When I think about it, I don't actually think I've seen them live.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't.
Oh, did you not go? Years ago when my brother and Ewan went to Manchester, were you not with them?
I don't think so. Maybe.
I think you're right. I don't think you went with them. It's the one when they covered Teenage Dirtbag. I remember them coming back and saying that. Yeah, I guess you didn't go. Yeah, I've seen them a couple of times. But yeah, very good.
Nice,
very good.
Cool. And then we got Menzingers. Yeah, I've seen them at least 10 times, I think now. But if we're knocking around for that would be good.
Well, we've got the Menzinger. They sort of clash with Alistair.
They kind of cross over a little bit, don't they?
Yeah. Where do you kind of lie on that one?
I'd go and watch the start of Menzingers. It depends on stage location, I guess. Really, if you can kind of do a bit of a route across, that would be good. But yeah, I mean, Alistair, seeing Alistair is, the opportunities to see Alistair are probably few and far between.
Exactly.
Now and in the future. So yeah, I think it'd be good to see those guys. I was kind of very keen to see Sublime until I found out that they're big MAGA people at the moment. It kind of put me off going to see them. There's loads of press about, I don't know if it's the drummer or something who's I
didn't know
supporter.
This. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of Sublime. I know you're not too bothered, but love Sublime for many years. So that would be cool. We've got state champs knocking about around the same time. Seen them a good few times as well, haven't we?
Yeah, well, maybe catch a bit of their set. You missed out Taking Back Sunday. You're not bothered about them?
No.
Yeah, I've never seen them, but I'll take it or leave it.
Yeah, I think the footage online is enough to pass on that you see. I was never a big fan back in the day, but you enjoyed a few of their songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, not too fussed about that. President do it popping off at the moment.
This is
quite heavy, but
the Charlie Simpson, right? I mean, it's not publicly him, but it's Charlie Simpson's band, right?
Yeah. They're doing pretty well. I've got that little band called Good Charlotte, probably, I guess, to finish off.
Yeah, I suppose we'll catch that.
You'll be going to Knock Loose instead, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was looking at Good Charlotte's set list because they did Sonic Temple last weekend. It's very bog standard.
Don't spoil it for me.
Okay, I won't. I'll not. Okay, all right.
Do they play anything from Cardiology?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. They never want to play that, do they?
It's such an underrated album of theirs for me.
It really is. I was actually looking at their, because they're in Australia at the start of the year, playing some unusual set lists there. Like they were opening with The River, and they're playing a couple of things off Cardiology. But maybe that's because they consider like the Australian fan base to be like their biggest fan base, so they get the slightly varied set lists. Whereas ours is very young and the hopeless heavy and stuff. Yeah,
it's got an hour and 20 minutes at got an hour and 20 minutes.
That's true. That's true. I think they only
only got an hour.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because the festivals Good Charlotte do in the States tend to be like a bit earlier in the day, so I guess they only have an hour. So that's a good point. They've got a bit longer here, so I wonder what they do throw in.
I suppose they're on that main stage anyway, so they kind of obviously not close to the other big headliner, but they finish it like 50 minutes earlier than Good Charlotte. But I guess they catch all the traffic on Good Charlotte will catch all the traffic on the way out of the festival grounds, for the last like 15 minutes of their set. So
yeah, totally.
So yeah, very much looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to Benji and Joel, but we'll nothing confirmed as yet.
Nothing confirmed, so we'll see on that one.
Yeah. If you did get your chance to speak to Benji and Joel, what are you asking them?
Why have you never played 1979 live?
Yeah, it's a good song, very good song.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that wasn't like a big like radio hit as well.
Yeah, it's very, I don't get it's strange. But yeah, I've definitely got questions for them. If and when the time comes that they're on this podcast in any form, I'll save it for that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Likewise.
Anyone else who's listening who's going to Slam Dunk, hope you have a great weekend.
Great. And before we get into Kevin Lyman, do you want to should we just quickly touch upon a couple of things come out since last time we did an intro? Because we have a couple of big releases. Obviously, Social Distortion. We last recorded one of these the night before that came out. That's now been in the world for a week and a half. Mm-hmm. How have you found that?
I mean, it's just like it's pretty quintessential Social Distortion, isn't it? Like
sure.
It's got the ballady stuff. It's got the rock and roll stuff. Like there's 3 or 4 really good strong tracks on it. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, it's what you'd want, and it was cool to see an appearance from Lucinda Williams on one of the songs as well. So all very cool. Brian, did you hear Brian Fallon's new music last week?
I haven't. No, I did see all the activity around it, but no, haven't.
Yeah, two new songs, very very what you'd expect from Brian Fallon. I think he worked with Butch Walker on them. It's not bad for New Jersey's the lead single, and then there's another song called Better Before, which is very Springsteen-esque. It's very good though.
And then we had the Super Sometimes record that came out. Obviously, we've got an interview with those guys coming out soon. That very much gets into more of the detail of the band's history and that record itself. But yeah, that's in the world now. I think it's a good effort from those boys. They're clearly really passionate about their style of music and pop punk
having spoken to them for a bit, you can safely say they bloody love pop punk, which made it very easy to get on with them.
What's it called? Show the World What's Underneath. It's been out since Friday. Some really good tracks on there. I think just for me, like you can tell they're still kind of defining their sound and like haven't really got that identity yet. I think they're still kind of working on that, but it's a really good introduction. New Bleachers album out next week. That passed me by.
The Bleachers stuff's very strong. I watched the K-Rock performance on YouTube the other night. It was unbelievable. So excited to hear that new record. And they're back in the UK at the end of the year. Got my Kingston ticket. Might go and see them at Hammersmith, and we'll do my best to get Jack Antonoff for a quick interview, as I always try.
Yeah, my brother's got tickets actually. So.
Oh, is he?
He's on it. Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Anything else?
No, I think that's all for now. Shall we hear from Kevin Lyman?
Let's do it.
Well, yeah, I think we set it up quite nicely at the start. So let's hear our interview with Mr. Kevin Lyman.
I am so sorry. Talk about wasting someone's time. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, my gosh, I was out. I don't know. It's Thursday's my teaching day, and it didn't pop up on my
Okay.
calendar. I don't know what happened. So sorry about that. I was out doing honestly some yard work this morning and kind of enjoying the morning. So
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. We appreciate you joining us. And actually, my co-host and I had it like an intro for another episode to record anyway. So we were, when we thought you weren't joining, we were just doing that. So it's absolutely fine. My co-host has just nipped to the restroom and he's coming back
okay.
in now. I see.
Uh,
But while he's joining us, I'll just introduce myself real quick, Kevin. So I'm Chris, one of the co-hosts of the Wasting Time podcast. I am coming from an office in the London School of Economics randomly, which is my day job, and so I'm based in London. But I will let my co-host introduce himself.
all
Yeah,
right.
hi Kevin. My name's Nick. I'm based up in the northeast of England in a place called Newcastle upon Tyne. Um,
Oh,
I'm not in any university. I'm at home at the moment, but yeah.
I take it you're West Coast based.
yeah, out here in California. So I teach at a University of Southern California full time. So we're getting to the end of the semester right now. So I'm on my way to school in an hour or so. So
Nice, nice.
yeah.
And the teaching thing, is that something that came in for you when Warped Tour kind of stopped in 2018? So have you kind of
They
been doing it since then, or were you doing it a bit before that?
Yeah, they semi well. I used to go out and speak at random universities throughout the year. It was always fun to go and do a day of teaching on campuses. And then I had a full time offer in 2018, so we were still, in the process of doing the full cross country tour. And then we had those wrap up shows in 2019,
Yeah.
and so it was kind of overlapping. And then now it's been overlapping again as we brought it back. So. And I was actually, I'm ramping up. We got a promo this weekend, and I was digging up a bunch of the old shirts from last. I have them in my garage, my office garage area, and I have a couple students going out and doing a promo this weekend for the shows in LA. So
Nice. It's funny, like you teaching as well. It reminds us of. Do you know our friend Rishi who runs Four Chord? Like he
yeah,
said, yeah, he says he
yeah.
speaks to you sometimes. So we're the media partner for Four Chord, so we fly out there every year. So, but
Oh,
like,
great.
because obviously, like he balances doing that with being a professor as well. So there's parallels with what he's
Yeah.
doing there.
Well, he used to come out on Warp Tour. Rishi
Of
used to come
course.
out on the road with us, and then when he was starting Four Chord, I give him advice or you know, try to help him avoid some of the mistakes I made,
Right.
to
Yeah.
bypass. So maybe I was teaching him at that point too. But nice to see, what a good person and what a great event. I wish I had the opportunity to actually visit it at some point, but once summer ramps up for everyone, we're all in a million directions.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and
He's a good
it's
guy, and I've heard people in Pittsburgh refer to him as the Kevin Lyman of Pittsburgh, basically, because what he does for the underground scene there and kind of keeping things alive and keeping it independent and DIY and all that kind of jazz. So
yeah, he
uh,
is great. I'm really glad that's been a successful event for him.
cool. Well, I guess we wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about Warped Tour of old and kind of what it did for the scene back in the day, and I guess the reach it had even over in the UK here and the reputation it had. But maybe let's kind of just start around this new iteration of Warped Tour, and you're 2 months out now. Kind of what's planning like? What's your involvement with Warped Tour
My
these days?
involvement, I work harder than I ever did on Warp Tour. No, it's really hard to ramp up. Sometimes people were saying like, "Oh my gosh, is this easier or harder?" And I'm like, "Well, it was different type of work. When you were getting ready to go on a 2 month, 2.5 month tour, there was a lot of that like ramping up, loading the trucks the first week, but then everything got, the worst thing I had to deal with was the weather and some of the situations that would come up maybe on the road. But it
Yeah.
was kind of, you got in a flow here that it's this start and stop. We're going to be starting and stopping 5 times this year. And they kind of start overlapping, and then your booking process for 2027 will start while you're in the middle of the Long Beach show. So it's kind of more on a really kind of intense cycle. You could miss a moment here whether it's marketing and on sale, booking.
Yeah.
It's much more. God, it's much more year round. I mean, work was always year round. I was always working on it year round, but this is much more like many more intense moments to deal with. Of in the business side of it. That with Warp before it was once you got the lineup announced, you sold the tickets, and you only had to do that once. Now you have to ramp up 5 different times. So
Yeah.
my involvement now is way more. No, I was always way more, but it's like, every day I'm working on this, and it's a lot of hours right now. It's definitely a lot of hours, and also trying to make sure, because work became kind of this, there's bigger stages, there's video and lights, but how to make sure that between the stages everything works. All the
Yeah.
nonprofits, the skateboarding, the attractions. We're having new things this year. Got to start thinking about new things next year. So it's yeah. I mean, I'm working on it all the time. Probably worked on it about 2 hours in the middle of the night last night. So at some point, I wake up and go through the emails I might have missed during the day.
Presumably, this was similar to the experience of bringing it back last year. And what was it? Was it 3 dates? Was it 3 dates you did last year?
Yeah, we did 3 dates. We did the
Yeah.
Washington D.C., Long Beach, and
Yeah.
Orlando show. And honestly, this year we have to sell some tickets. Last year was like an anomaly. Announcing, selling tickets before we even announced the bands. I knew that was a little bit about like, oh wow, exciting. But then this year, we still have tickets to sell. We're doing well.
Yeah.
I mean, the shows are going to be just fine. But all of a sudden, you're in, marketing again. You're marketing, and we really did realize that. I always expected maybe that upper age demo for Warped might come back, but may not come back the second time because their feet hurt a lot more. You go back to festivals. I can't say I'd be going to many festivals at the age I'm at. Just physically, it gets tough to go to multi-day festivals.
Yeah.
But the exciting side of it is we saw so many new people at the show last year that had never been to a festival or maybe never even to a concert. So building off of that this year, so we're kind of in this year. We knew that this was going to be a kind of a potentially transition year, and we're seeing a lot of new buyers. Usually you can check at credit cards and who's buying, and 2/3 of the people buying tickets right now are new buyers. So hopefully a new generation's getting turned on to what we're doing, because it'll only help the scene in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And obviously, it's a nice mix of new and old artists. I guess, like Warped Tour's historically always been. Sorry, Nick. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, not just on that point. I was going to say, kind of, who personally you most excited about booking wise from, I guess, one, the old school kind of bands, and the kind of newer bands. Who's kind of
Look, for me, it's I'm not out as much as I used to be. And to go, to walk backstage and get a hug from Jarrett from Bowling for Soup, or Nat from 303, or Tim from Rise Against, or any of the other bands that I toured with. It was like an old home week. It was seeing the guys in Day to Remember, and they're meeting their families, or
Yeah.
Tyson Ritt, having Tyson. That's one part of it. But then for me, it's always been the exciting side to see bands like Lolo, or Chase Petra, or Honey Revenge, or watch Magnolia Park or Paradox connecting with a new audience. That's what Warped was really about. And the biggest part of us, that was how were we going to invest in these bands. And that's why you're seeing some of these bands come back for a second year in a row, and hopefully we move them up, similar to what we would do with Paramore, or Day to Remember, or My Chem, or Fall Out Boy. Historically, we would have brought them back multiple years because we saw them connecting, and we only knew their audience was going to grow. And if we could be part of that process of exposing them to a different audience or a larger audience, that's the satisfying feeling you get from I think, doing this. I didn't need to come back and produce another festival, to be honest. I built a lot of festival sites in my life,
Yeah.
probably as many as anyone in history, if you just take all those Warped Tour dates. But what I really felt was being a professor, you're on campus, and that pandemic left kind of a community hole in music. I mean, there was a generation of people that didn't get turned on to live music or that opportunity to go out and enjoy that. And then the economics coming back after post-pandemic, ticket prices got higher, producing a festival got higher, everything got higher. So the entry point was hard for people, and maybe they weren't going to choose to explore. So when given the opportunity with Insomniac to come back and bring that ticket price as close to fair as we possibly can, starting at that $150 ticket. I think we've crept up now as we go through the tiers to about $190 for a 2-day festival. It's still a good value that includes your fees. I wanted to get new people out to enjoy festivals, which only helps all the other festivals in the long run, because it becomes part of your DNA to go out and have the sense of a community.
Nice. I mean, is there anything you have to kind of compromise now versus kind of back in the day, in terms of how you do things?
Well, there's a lot more paperwork these days. I got to tell you, I mean, that's really what it is. There's much more paperwork to get things done. A lot of times there's just like, if I saw something and be like, just add that band, or let's set up that little skate ramp, or oh yeah, come down and have a booth. Now, a little more paperwork with this partner, but they're understanding, and it's great because I they understand that I come from that background of always DIY, kind of spur of the moment, figure out what's right, what would fit for the show, and they've adopted pretty well, and they're great to work with. I have to say, I spent the day over there at Insomniac yesterday, and they're very, very supportive, of what Warped is about, because a lot of the work they do is in the EDM space. And Pasquale, who founded Insomniac, built that community of fans of it in electronic dance music. But he always says, I paid attention to the Warped shows when I was growing up too. And he just took it to his audience in the same way. So it's been great, but it kind of goes back to, when coming to the UK the first few times when we were there, and having to knock the doors down at Reading and Leeds, who weren't booking. They weren't booking bands like Blink 182 or Pennywise or Less Than Jake. It was all about, Blur, Oasis, those kind of bands. And getting the opportunity, the first year it just sticks in my mind because, we were like the, I don't know, the stepchild you didn't want to have at your show at first, but you had to take it or try it. And they gave us the smallest tent, and we got in there with our skateboard ramp, and we had to set it up ourselves. And
who did you bring on that first one?
That was Blink. That was Blink and Pennywise, and I think the Vandals were there with us. And then we had bands like Less Than Jake and Royal Crown Review. And it was all of a sudden, it was like that tent was about getting tipped over. Kids were swinging. It was great. Second, and then the founders of Reading and Leeds, literally I said, look, I have to get everything on a ferry tonight so we can get over to Pukkelpop and Lowlands the next couple of days, because we had no stagehands. And the next thing I know, they were helping me load up the truck because they knew that, wow, this is a little different. And then the second year we moved up to the next tent. The third year we were in the biggest tent, and that was getting knocked over. And then all those bands started getting booked up on the bigger stages, which, that's what Warped was about. And people go, oh, then we had the lucky chance to meet Mark Walker at Kilimanjaro, and he was a big fan of Warped Tour, and then bring it back, to Ali Pali a couple times. And that was fun. And then it's nice to see people that started things like Slam Dunk, those festivals over there, because, in my heart, I believe they were inspired by Warped, those guys.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And now obviously Slam Dunk's a huge thing over here.
Yeah. So people some people say you should come back to the UK, and I go, you seem like you have some good people doing stuff over there right now.
Yeah. And again, I guess Slam Dunk kind of hits with the price point as well. It's it's really accessible for people over here, which is great.
Yeah, and that's.
But I guess just talking about that global impact that Warped has though over the years, because it wasn't just about the live music thing, and for us in the UK here, it created a platform for us to access and see these bands that we loved that we didn't have a lot of in the UK. Did you kind of feel that? Did you feel and I guess when did you feel that actually Warped Tour was more than just a live music festival, and it was a like a real core part of the scene.
Well, I think it's sometimes, those first message boards were, I was exploring, things, and I booked an artist named Eminem, who no one really knew in the States. And the first message boards, that's when you first get your first death threats. It was like, you knew that the kids were passionate about your brand, even though we'd had hip hop on Warped with, before that, these kids were like, this is arts, and then I like now they say, oh, I saw Eminem on the first Warped Tour, and I go, I thought all of you turned your backs on him.
Yeah, of course.
It was, but I also, started, when paying attention, when the fans, but I don't know if we, it was also with the nonprofits over here, the charity work that the fans were involved in, the clothing companies that were launched off of Warp, the Volcums and the Hurleys, and it was just, you started connecting, and I think there was always this group of fans and artists that traditional radio didn't play and traditional media didn't follow and pay attention back then. In the UK, you didn't have these great podcasts and stuff to promote this music. I think you had a BBC radio, and you had very little access for these artists. And then Warped kind of made people pay attention to it in a sense. Over here, there was radio stations weren't playing, and all of a sudden there's shows that are 15, 20,000 kids coming out, and radio couldn't ignore Blink or Sum 41 or Simple Plan. And, and now it's fun that, we are going to Mexico and Montreal, and right now, trust me, the U.S. isn't really looked upon in a positive light by so many people, and deservedly. But you know what? There's a lot of good people in this country, and the exchange of music is important, and that's a building block again. This community is a building block. So, when I look at the message boards, and they were in Spanish and they were in French for the French Canadians. Now, I think the French Canadians were cussing me out maybe at first, but I couldn't understand it. But, they warmed up to the lineup. They understood the process. And just to see this communication amongst people. And I think that's what Warped was really about. And it organically, there was no plan to become what it did. It just evolved. And that's paying attention to the fans. I wasn't... that's really just listening to what their wants and needs are.
Going back to when it first started, I think 95, first year?
Yeah, 95, yeah.
Well, a long time ago now. Did you, that first summer, did you just want to see what happened and just like, let's do this for a summer, let's see what goes? Or did you kind of envision this could be like a rolling festival that I can do? For several years, how did that come about?
I was going to do it 1 year. I mean, it was just like, I wanted to go. I'd already been working 13 years in the clubs of LA, 320 nights a year. I was the first stage manager of Lollapalooza, which was a touring festival back then. I worked with James Addiction and those artists. And I just wanted to go do something my own way, myself, from observing and watching interactions of people and artists. And I just thought that you could bring these kind of underserviced artists, I felt, and we did get known as a punk festival. But that first year, when you look at the lineup, it was Quicksand, there was Orange 9mm, No Use for a Name, L7, Sublime, No Doubt. That was an eclectic mix of artists, and that was more for me working in the clubs and seeing that, look at rock fans would like grunge fans, and punk fans can appreciate grunge. And all of a sudden the sound of, Sublime, this California surf reggae sound was coming. And I go, wait, it's almost the same kids. And if we could pull together, we could be stronger than competing every night in those clubs. Like, they were literally at that point, every night there was another show. And I'd go, just think if you could bring all these people in one place together, maybe they would exchange, and that's what we do with this. We've got this other little tour going out called Summer School that we work on over here.
Yeah. We actually had Tobin and Michael Kaminsky on the show last summer, just before that.
And they're trying to do the same thing. I help in the background and help with that. It's, these discussions you have is if you could cross-pollinate audiences, maybe they're going to find some and there's going to be some crossover and expansion. We know now that there's kids that like punk, that like EDM. I mean, and
Sure.
and like rap. So, if we can, and I think there's a bubbling alternative scene again. There's this amazing artists, and it's much more diverse now. There's more women that are fronting bands that are fantastic. You're starting to see, African American people that there was only a few when I grew up. It was Fishbone and a few bands like that,
Yeah.
and Bad Brains, and now you have, Nova Twins, Paradox, Magnolia Park, and many, many more.
Yeah.
There's so much more, and if we can unite this music scene, there, indie artists have a hard time, and they need to unite to grow. And I just felt like I was having fun. I'm having fun overall. I'm having fun again.
I mean, I guess you talked about like the community of Warped Tour, and I know we've talked to a lot of artists over the years who have played a big part in Warped. Kind of in those early 2000s, they talk about the community aspect behind the scenes as well, and how back in the day, the bands had to come and they had roles and they had to do jobs behind the scenes. There was no one was bigger than others. I mean, talk to a little bit about that kind of ethos that you had back in the day. And is that possible today? I guess things have changed a little bit.
I don't know if it's changed, but I think the band saw me working as hard for them. I was out at every show. Dickie Barrett, I was talking to Dickie the other day, and he goes, "Oh man, I don't know how many times I'd be walking through thinking I was a rock star, and you'd look at me and say, 'Hey, grab that end of the trash can and help me take it over to the trash can,' or
Yeah.
help me move that fence over here." And he goes, "I just did it." He goes, "I just did it because everyone else would just do that."
Yeah.
We did have that movie one time, No Room for Rock Stars.
Yeah.
I think it just was and it's what I did, and I was lucky to get to do it. And then you get goosebumps when you open the doors, and having a job. I just turned 65 2 weeks ago. I'm, been doing now this for 46 years ago. I did my first show, and
Amazing.
I lost those goosebumps in 2017, 18. I was starting to think, look at this as a job, the first job I ever had. And,
Right.
and I go, you know what? I think I've done everything I possibly could. Beyond Warped Tour, I had Mayhem Festival, Taste of Chaos. I had Latin festivals. I worked with Jay-Z on hip hop tours. I'd done country tours, bluegrass tours with T-Bone Burnett. And I just felt I'd almost done everything I possibly could. It wasn't exciting anymore. And I just didn't want to it goes back to the first day I worked in a club. And when I walked in that club, I said, I never want to become that guy. And that guy or that girl, and that person because you go to venues and you're so pumped up in your heart to go see live music with your friends, you're excited. And then there's someone bumming your night out, whether it's the security guard, the box office person, the stage manager, the sound person. And you look at him and go, wow, you had that at one point, that was the best job you could ever have in your life. And all of a sudden it became that job. And then you became that guy. And your job, you're now bumming people out. And I never wanted to bum people out. It's not been perfect. There's people that don't like Kevin Lyman. That's cool. But in the long run, when you start you stack up your life, and that's what you do. You just, there's going to be people that criticize me. That's fine. But, I've laid it out there for people, and I'm happy overall. There's moments there's a little bit of depression when you do this kind of business too. It's
Sure.
you fight through it. You wake up and there's days I just but overall I got to look back at my life and go, hey, you've done some pretty good stuff, and you've treated people, and you're going to leave this world with. Not everyone's going to like you, but they've got to respect what you did, I hope.
Kind of touching upon the years of Warped Tour. I've seen you many times in the press over the years tell some amazing stories. I just want to touch on a couple of those now. One of the immediate ones that comes to mind is the Kid Rock Fletcher story, which is even in a Dropkick Murphys song now. Sorry, go on.
Oh my God. I would never agree with Kid Rock on pretty much anything at this point. But you know what? I gotta say, when I had that, different moments with Kid Rock, that one's been well documented, the Fletcher thing. But there was actually a moment where Kid Rock had a publicist, and they were actually a publicist that was the same publicist as ours for Warped Tour. And we went to Florida, and there was a cursing law. You couldn't curse on stage. And he was being set up to challenge that law and get thrown in jail. Okay. And I was always fighting to find places for Warped Tour to play.
Yeah.
And I said, I saw him before the show, and I said, right now you're under our umbrella, the Warped Tour umbrella, and we fight for young artists to give you a platform to be there. And he wasn't as outspoken as he was now. He was younger. But I said, if you go up there and do this today, it'll ruin it for all the people behind you. At one point, you're going to be big enough. I knew he was going to be big. I didn't know in what world, and I didn't know where he is now. But I also said, and he looked at me, and it sank in. And I went out in the crowd, and I sat there because I knew this was all going down, and he never said a curse word. And the promoter was going to pull the power because the police were there. It was all crazy, but I kind of laid low. And then he'd shout to the crowd, and they would cuss back, but he never did. And I ran over to the promoter. He was going to pull the power. And I said, do not pull the power. He has not broken the law.
Yeah.
And that was the one moment we kind of connected on this mutual respect kind of level, I think.
Right. Okay.
I don't, I got, and that's one thing. So there's that balance, we love to talk about, the crazy, but, there was one moment where we kind of connect, where he understood that Warp was a platform for these young artists. And at one point he can do whatever he wants. And that's what he does now, which I fucking is crazy to me, but that's his world, and he's not under the Warped umbrella anymore. And that's okay.
Sure.
So I'm not, you could write books and probably do 20 episodes on Fletcher stories and those kind of things. But Fletcher's also, you see the kindest side of these people too. We have those outrageous stories, and there's been some outrageous people on Warped Tour when you really look at it, and even to this day, I see, you see someone like Jeffree Star, who grew up in those Warped Tour parking lots, and has gone on to probably be the most successful person ever out of those parking lots in a weird way. But I also, he's got one persona online, and then there's this other side I see where they spend hours talking to a kid that's trying to question their sexuality and figure life out and willing to listen to him. Or you have Ronnie Radke, who has an online persona, but I've seen him spend time with cancer patients and work with them and bring them on stage to sing with them. And I can say that over and over again. I've seen the better side of people. Now, hey, Warped is not a perfect society, and there's been talk about that. And it's you do the best you can, but when you were dealing with 800 to 1,000 people a day on tour, that's how many people were on that tour. And I had hoped that managers and agents would send their best of the best out with me, because early on in my starting of Warped Tour, I knew everyone. So if I felt that they weren't a good part of society, our culture of punk rock, I wouldn't invite them. Later on, I didn't know them on a personal level. I was hoping people would send me their best, and sometimes they didn't. And then their problem would become my problem. And I've always been a little outspoken, and I had to make decisions. And, I didn't make every decision. I'm sure I didn't make every decision right, but I had to make them. Because if anyone goes into this situation, you have to learn how to make decisions and live with them, because you've got 90 things going on a day, and you don't have time sometimes to sit there and process them. Looking back at it, I probably would have done a few things different. But like I say, I put anyone in those situations I was in and see what they would have come up with.
On the subject of doing things different, are there any artists like you've kind of vetoed for Warped Tour or passed on for Warped Tour over the years that you kind of look back and regret that you didn't get at the time, who then went on to do stuff? Is there anyone that jumps out like that? Because I don't know, because I feel like everyone's done Warped Tour.
Look, for one reason, I wanted, I regret that the Ramones never got to do Warped Tour.
Okay.
I tried.
Yeah.
I wanted them. I was going to give them their own stage, call it All Ramones all the time. They could have played all those crazy incarnations they were in of other bands, but give me a 30-minute Ramones set. That would have been special. Joe Strummer was supposed to play the Warped Tour. We had agreed that he was going to play the Warped Tour. And I went to a show. It was right around Thanksgiving. And then I get a call right around Christmas. I was on a holiday with my family that he had passed away. And I would have loved to have him out.
2002.
there's bands that I wish, had, but sometimes Panic at the Disco would have been great to have on Warped Tour. I never got to have them on Warped Tour. 21 Pilots were supposed to do Warped Tour, but their agent talked them out of it. I think they would have been great to have on it.
Yeah.
But not really. Not really. I think now it takes bands that understand. Some of those bigger bands that have come back, they could have negotiated for a few more dollars, but then it wouldn't have left dollars for those smaller bands and those smaller stages that we have. So everyone has to cooperate to make Warped Tour work now. And the thing right now, it's an economic model. It comes down to, you have to run a business, and sometimes our economics of our ticket price and what it costs to run a show, because we pay the same for a foot of fence or a toilet or those things as any of the bigger festivals. Sometimes our economics models don't match up, and actually that kind of makes me proud, because I know what those bands started at Warped Tour, and now what they maybe command as a fee just won't work with what we are doing right now. Hopefully one point we can cross paths and they can come back and do a show. They can play with us and we would work together to make that work. And I think some of those bands will remember that they were those small bands on those small stages. And it's up to the whole scene to pull those bands along. You hope, some bands won't, but I know there's bands that do, that get it, that they were those small bands on small stages and they need a platform and a hand up. And that's what Warped was. That's what punk used to be. We used to all give a hand up to each other.
Of course.
I guess kind of when you're in the midst of Warped and a festival, kind of what gives you the biggest headache or keeps you awake at night? What's the stuff that you really worry about?
Weather. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely the weather. I mean, anyone who says the climate hasn't changed is living with their head in the sand. I'm sorry, it's changed. I spent 30 years on the road, and now coming back a bit. I did Warped and Lollapalooza and worked outdoor shows, and I saw the changing weather. And you feel it over in the UK now. Your beaches might become real beaches. I hear the heat wave you have during the summertime now. You guys are starting to get suntans over there.
Yeah, we do get pretty hot summers now.
Yeah. That's changed. That's definitely changed. Beachfront property might become. You guys might want to invest over in the UK.
Well, we were when we were in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. There was an electrical storm during Reliant K's, the middle of Reliant K's set, and we don't deal with stuff like that over here. And the whole festival got evacuated, and then everyone was back in 20 minutes later, and then everyone carried on.
Reliant K carried on with their set. Yeah.
It's it's just a term, but I use a lot that I got tired of running towards the lightning. And that meant so many things. My job was to run towards the lightning, and I needed a break from that. I really did. My job was to run towards every problem and try to figure out the best way to solve them. And I needed to go home and enjoy my, being on the road for 30 summers and not enjoying a summertime with your wife and your kids. My kids would be out on the road. They were always out working with me. They worked on the tour, but now we fly in, do a couple shows, and I jump on a plane the next morning, and I'm teaching Tuesday morning, or teaching a class from Zoom. I taught a class from Orlando Zoom to all my students from the show. So, adapting a little bit again.
Do your students kind of get spun out by who you are and what you're involved in and the connections and that kind of thing?
Not really. They realize I'm just a person, and and the nice thing is I'm able to help some of them. I've gotten many people into the business that wanted to, or given them the opportunity just to prove themselves, where having warped on your resume was always a calling card for people. If you go to any festival, having Warped on your resume was like, okay, we know you're going to work hard, you're going to have a good attitude, and you're not going to complain that much. Now many of them are getting jobs because they say, I went to USC and Kevin was my teacher, because they know that
awesome.
And my wife was like, why would you go it's a hard business you're in. And for right or wrong, I feel some of the things I've done it made the business a little better.
Sure.
And I felt that if I could pass that on to the next generation and a group of people, maybe they'll carry on some of that stuff. It's great because my students now all put on concerts and they have a charity for every concert. When I went to school, they weren't doing that. So every time now they'll have a little tent and a little booth and they'll have a vendor. It's about community. I mean, people are lacking that community in so many ways. And like these phones we have are not really community. They're not of space. You can get information on them, but we get all sucked in. And now that they get sucked in by influencers that are actually AI, that's going to be crazy. And they're not even real. They're not even real people influencing people anymore. But live music won't change. You're going to be in that parking lot. You're going to feel the emotions. It's going to be in your heart. You might have that moment with someone else, or it might inspire you to pick up a guitar, start a podcast, get
Sure.
involved in the business, pick up a skateboard, because that's what Warped was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a giant parking lot, like a party in a parking lot, a backyard thing that you felt you could be part of.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we appreciate your time, Kevin, and we appreciate you've kind of got to get away. We did want to kind of finish with a bit of a quick fire question
Sure.
feature at the end, and then we can kind of let you go if that's cool. So the quick fire thing is just band most likely to. So we're gonna ask you loads of questions. Band most likely to X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
And you can just give us one out from your experience from over the years, if that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so band most likely to be everyone's best friend.
Bowling for Soup.
Having met them a couple of times, yeah, I think we can see why you would say that.
They are the official house band of the Warped Tour.
Makes sense. Jarrett is a lot of fun. Band most likely to get into trouble with law enforcement.
Oh gosh, well that was started with Sublime. They got arrested twice in 2 days out on Warped Tour.
Yeah, R.I.P. Bradley Noel. Most likely to rebook every single year without any hesitation.
303.
Most likely to turn up late.
If I ever book Lil Wayne.
Most likely to try and get out of catering duties.
That's a hard one. I'm going back through it. Almost everyone jumped in at some point or another. So I don't think anyone completely avoided them. Everyone was pretty cool about helping out at some point.
That's fair.
Good.
Most likely to party too hard.
Oh, Crossfaith.
Is that Japanese band?
Japanese band. Oh yeah, that's a story behind that. One time they partied so hard, and that rule. It was always that thing like we know who partied too hard because they'd be playing first the next morning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
we were down in Florida, and it was like they went hard in St. Pete the nights before, and I said, okay, I need to check them a little bit. It was just always a little check. Put them on at 11:30 in the morning, and it was so hot, humid, Florida, August, and they played, and they look at me and they go, "Now we get to party more." Backfired. They had all day to party. Yeah.
Okay. Most likely to be responsible for the most crowd-related injuries. So from just creating mayhem in the crowd.
Mayhem in the crowd.
Injuries.
Oh, God. Injuries.
Mosh pits.
Mosh pits. Oh, God. Slaughter to prevail these days.
Most likely to stress you out.
I think Alien Ant Farm stressed me out once.
I do remember you telling the story about I think the singer being maybe a bit of a prima donna.
That stressed me out a bit. I don't get that stressed out, and you have to have a short memory to make it in this business. Like people bring stuff up all the time, and I'm like, I don't remember. Or bands come up and apologize to me 10 years later. I'm like, I don't remember.
And I guess just kind of to finish, kind of what's the band that you have the biggest soft spot for, like that you still kind of love to this day, like.
Oh, that's probably two of them. I can't say one. Rancid, I just want them to come and play more. They were always my favorite band. Honestly, when I'd hear them play, I wanted to go hear them. And then, of course, Less Than Jake, who's always come back and been part of and so positive about being part of Warped Tour's community.
Nice.
Excited about the reunions, though. I could let you in on something tomorrow. We're announcing a Real Big Fish reunion for the West Coast.
Oh, cool.
Amazing.
Which will be a lot of fun. I'm starting to call the singers and say, hey, you got to get back out here and do something.
Yeah.
There's a fan base. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Kevin, thanks so much for your time. As you know, people who grew up on the Warped Tour genre of music, you could call it a genre of music at this point. It's it's an honor to spend a bit of time with you, and
well,
really appreciate it.
Just remember, Orlando in November is a nice place to get away from the UK. Sometimes, So and it's a short flight. So
we'll keep that in mind. We're I think stretching it with doing the 4-chord Pittsburgh thing every year with our wives and families, but we're keen to get out to more US festivals. So Warped Tour will be up there.
I bet if you went to your wives and families and said Orlando Disneyland,
That's true.
They would lock you in. You'd be locked up. So
that's a good route. That's a good route.
You can double whammy it. Well, hopefully we'll cross paths at some point. And thank you for the support. And sorry to waste your time this morning a little bit trying to
Not at all. Not at all.
All right.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.